Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to explain my approach to improving spoken English fluency. There are many different methods that people have come up with to practice fluency, but what I'm going to teach you in this video is based on my own ideas and research. This is going to be a long video, but it's divided into 4 parts. If you need to take a break, I recommend that you do that in between parts. Again, there will be some difficult words, and I'll explain everything clearly, but you might need to watch this video a couple times. Please use the English subtitles if you need them. Part 1. Introduction. Improving fluency involves 2 things. First, you need extensive practice listening to fluent speakers. The more you listen to fluent speech, the more you will notice the patterns and rhythms of it. Second, you need extensive practice interacting with fluent speakers. That means back and forth conversation. For both of these, the best situation would be an immersion environment. That means that every day you are surrounded by fluent speakers and you must interact and do everything in English. The best way to do this is to study abroad or move to an English-speaking country. People who study abroad almost always make great improvements to their spoken fluency simply through immersion. Of course, that's not easy to do, especially right now. We are not abroad. We are here in Japan. It's almost impossible to create an immersion environment in a non-English speaking country. But that doesn't mean there's nothing we can do. Earlier I said, the more you listen to fluent speech, the more you will notice the patterns and rhythms of it. In this video, I'm going to explain some aspects of those patterns and rhythms, and we're going to look at some examples. In a way, this will give you a shortcut to noticing some of the patterns of fluent speech. It's very important that you continue doing your regular narrow listening practice. I'm going to ask you to pay attention and try to notice these things in your practice. Pretty soon, the narrow listening practice will make more sense. In the last video, we talked about how spoken fluency is measured. The 3 important measures I introduced were speech rate, pause location, and length of runs. All 3 of these measures are connected, and each one will affect the others. In order to improve spoken fluency, we need to find ways to improve these measures. Let's take a look at how fluent speakers do it. Part 2. How do fluent speakers do it? In the video, What is Spoken Fluency?, I said that disfluency means you are struggling somewhere in the process of speaking. Imagine you are trying to watch a YouTube video on your smartphone, but your connection is bad. The video keeps stopping to load. The same thing is happening in your brain. There's too much information to process and not enough time to do it. I'm sure you know this feeling. So how do fluent speakers do it without stopping to load all the time? Fluent speakers have tricks to reduce the amount of information they need to process. You already know these tricks in your native language, but maybe you never noticed them. When you are speaking to your friends in your native language, how often do you think about grammar? Almost never. Fluent speakers do not need to think about grammar much at all, only a little. It's automatic. This is just like the analogy of driving a car. You don't need to think about it because your body knows what to do. Once in a while you need to think about which way to turn, but that's it. Now, this is not because fluent speakers are all excellent at grammar. Many people become fluent without studying grammar. Of course, I'm not trying to say that you don't need grammar or you shouldn't study it. But we shouldn't have to always think about grammar while we are speaking. It's okay when we are writing, but when we are speaking, there's not enough time. Fluent speakers do not need to think about grammar much at all. This is because when someone who is fluent speaks, they are not speaking one word at a time. Instead, fluent speakers have a large collection of chunks or bundles of words that they can say as a single unit. Think of it like Lego. If you do everything one block at a time, it takes a long time. But if you already have some chunks that are already put together, you can work much faster. And many times the grammar is built in. Now there are many different names for these chunks or bundles, but I'm going to call them multi-word sequences, or MWSs, because this is the safest and clearest term for what I am talking about. From now on, I will use this name a lot. Sometimes I'll say multi-word sequence, and sometimes I'll say MWS, so please remember this name. To give a simple definition, a multi-word sequence is a string of words that appear together. Now, that could be anything. There could be infinite multi-word sequences. What we are interested in are the common ones. So we should add a little bit to this name and call them high-frequency multi-word sequences. But that's getting too long, so I'll just call them MWSs. Some MWSs appear so frequently and are used so often that we can remember and say them as if they were one word. So, one word at a time is not efficient. It slows us down. The first key to becoming fluent is to move away from one word at a time by collecting and using more multi-word sequences. This is something that you would start doing naturally if you were around fluent English enough, and you might not even notice it. Now, let's take a deeper look at MWSs. Part 3. Multi-word sequences in fluent speech. Now we're going to learn to recognize MWSs in fluent speech. Once you start to notice them, you'll see them everywhere. First, let's talk a little bit about the rhythm of English. In general, English has two types of words: content words and function words. Content words are information. These are the words that we build our sentences around. They are the four primary parts of speech: nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. Most of what we really want to say is found in content words. Unfortunately, we can't get away with using only content words. Function words are all of the other words that connect and hold the content words together and give slight adjustments to their meaning. Function words are mostly short and simple words that don't carry much information by themselves. Articles like a and the, conjunctions like and, but, or, so, prepositions like in, at, on, by, to, pronouns like I, you, her, him, theirs, and particles, which are all the other things that don't fit. When we talk about the rhythm of English, content words usually get stress, and function words usually don't. Let's go back to the example sentence from the previous video. Last weekend, I went shopping with my friends, and we went to a new restaurant for lunch. I use this sentence to illustrate the natural location of pauses and the one clause at a time aspect of fluent speech. These are the content words, and these are the function words. Now, I know I said that verbs are content words, but some are so simple and common that they are treated like function words. For example, go, went in this sentence. The content words get stress. Here is the natural rhythm of the sentence. Last weekend, I went shopping with my friends, and we went to a new restaurant for lunch. Fluent speakers connect function words and say them very quickly. In fact, they often say them so fast that non-native speakers have trouble understanding them. In the example sentence, we have a long string of function words in the third clause. And we went to a. A fluent speaker would combine all of these words into one fast string. And we went to a. Many combinations of function words are so common that the pronunciation is reduced and it gets blended together into one continuous string. So this is very important. Common combinations of function words get connected and reduced. Let's look at an example of fluent English. This is a short conversation between Barack Obama and Jerry Seinfeld. I want you to listen for multi-word sequences that get repeated many times.
What sport is politics? Is it chess? Is it liar's poker?
That's interesting. That was a good question. It's probably most like football.
football.
Yeah, because a lot of players, a lot of specialization, a lot of
Right.
hitting,
A lot of attrition.
a lot of attrition. But then every once in a while, you'll see an opening. Right. So you're going to be, you hit the line, you get 1 yard, you
Right.
try a play, you get sacked. Now it's like 3rd and 15. But every once in a while, you have to punt a lot. But
Right.
but every once in a while, you'll see a hole, and then there's open field.
You probably noticed a lot of.
A lot of players, a lot of specialization, a lot of hitting,
A lot of attrition.
a lot of attrition.
And maybe every once in a while.
Every once in a while, but every once in a while, you'll see.
These are common multi-word sequences. There are several others in the clip as well. That was a,
That was a good question.
you're gonna be,
So you're going to be,
now it's like,
and then there's open field.
Again, all of these are high-frequency multi-word sequences. They are made almost completely from function words. So this is how fluent speakers do it. They have a large collection of high-frequency multi-word sequences in their heads. They can use these to speak quickly, with long runs, and without stopping to think. In fact, some researchers have found that over 50% of native speakers' spoken language is made up of common multi-word sequences. So, a good way to improve fluency is to learn and practice common multi-word sequences. Of course, this is not magic. It still takes lots of time and practice. But this is a way to learn and practice more efficiently. I tested this in my own research. In 2017, I published a study with Jennifer Larson Hall called Teaching Formulaic Sequences in the Classroom: Effects on Spoken Fluency. Formulaic sequences is another name for multi-word sequences. In our study, we taught 2 speaking classes using the same listening materials for 8 weeks. One class focused on grammar. The other class focused on multi-word sequences. Before and after the 8 weeks, I recorded the students' conversations, and I measured their speech rate and mean length of run, MLR. You should remember these measures from the last video. This is the speech rate change of the class that studied grammar. The left is their speech rate before the class, and the right is their speech rate after the class. Each colored line is a different student, and the thick black line in the middle is the class average. By looking at these lines, we can see if there's any improvement. You can see that some students improved and some went down. Of course, I measured them having conversations, so they may have felt nervous or uncomfortable. But this is the class that studied multi-word sequences. In this case, you can see most of the students made big improvements in their speech rate. Here is the mean length of run for the class that studied grammar. Mixed results again. And here is the class that studied multi-word sequences. Solid improvement. So again, a good way to improve fluency is to learn and practice common multi-word sequences. But I want to talk about this word, common. There are so many multi-word sequences, how do we know which ones are common? Let's talk about that. Part 4, the corpus approach. From now on, instead of common, I'm going to say high frequency. We are interested in high frequency multi-word sequences. But how do we know frequency? How do we know which multi-word sequences are common? We can use a corpus. This is one of my favorite things in the world. Basically, a corpus is a very large collection of language that we can put into a computer and analyze. For example, the Harry Potter series is a very large collection of language. We can put the text from all of these books into a computer, and the computer can count the words and tell us how many times each word appears. What do you think is the most common word in Harry Potter? It's the. Isn't that exciting? Actually, the is the most common word in the English language. Here is the top 10. They're all function words because we use them so many times. Of course, there are many more things we can do with a corpus, but right now we just want to think about frequency. Now, Harry Potter isn't going to help us find out about spoken English, because it's a book. The English that's used in books is very different from the English that we use in conversation. What we need is a large corpus of spoken English. So I'm using the spoken section of the Open American National Corpus. This is a giant collection of face-to-face and telephone conversations. Altogether, there are over 3,200,000 words of spoken English conversation in this corpus. You've probably written essays that are 500 or 1,000 words. This video contains over 2,000 words. Now imagine 3,200,000 words. It's a lot. So we can put all of that English into a computer, and we can count the words, and we can see how many times they appear. But remember, we're not interested in words right now. We're interested in multi-word sequences. So what I've done is I've used this corpus to make a list of the most common multi-word sequences that are at least 3 words long using a wonderful program called AntConc. Quiz time. What do you think is the #1 most common multi-word sequence in English conversation? I don't know. Seriously, I don't know is the #1 most common high-frequency multi-word sequence. This sequence of 3 words appears in the corpus 5,090 times. So I took the list and I looked for patterns. A lot of them were very similar. So I put them into categories based on common words and sorted them by frequency. Then, for each category, I chose 10 of the most common multi-word sequences. And this is the chart. In this class, we're going to learn and practice all of these. You will do lots of practice listening to them, saying them, and using them in sentences. You should remember each one of these like it's one word. We are not studying I don't know. We are studying I don't know. If you learn and practice these, you can improve your listening skills. If you listen to fluent English, you will hear these often. And you can improve your spoken fluency. These multi-word sequences can help you make longer runs and to speak more efficiently without having to stop and think as much. We will study 1 or 2 categories each week, but you should keep studying them and practicing them after this class is finished. Okay, that was a long video. In the next few videos, I'm going to explain our weekly practice for studying these high-frequency multi-word sequences.